Hello and welcome to the Martin Howard Property Podcast / YouTube video channel / short form video channel / wherever you're seeing or listening to this. Today we are doing how to make money in property in 2023 because it's a very liquid market. Things are changing. I need to figure out what to do because the sands have shifted. It's not what it was last year, the year before that. We're in a different place now and we need to know what to do. So let's work through it. So we're going to do this in a couple of sections. Going to go looking at the challenges that we're facing as property investors, developers and landlords. And then I'm going to look at the opportunities that presents, because wherever there are headwinds, there are tailwinds in another direction. All we have to do is put our sail up, find the prevailing wind and go with it. There's no point in sailing against the wind. So I'm going to show you exactly which way it's blowing and how we as professionals can operate in this marketplace with the way it's changing and still make good money in property and provide really good habitable spaces for people to live in, which is what we do effectively, right? So the challenges we are facing are Section 24 taxation, the tenant fee bans that are existing in different jurisdictions, the eviction restriction and bans that are coming and that are here because of COVID. And I don't think they're going to go away. Whenever people lose rights because of safety, they never really get them back. And it's a whole other conversation to be had. But whenever governments use a good crisis, they never waste a good crisis is a politician's phrase. We had the COVID issue. They took a lot of our rights away. We won't be seeing them again. Rent increase legislation. There are areas of the UK where you're not allowed to increase rents at all. We'll go through over those areas, what to do about those, and there are methods you can use to overcome those. The interest rates, the era of basically free money is over. The banks aren't going to give that back, and how they achieved that is an interesting conversation to have, and we will do that. Inflation, in fact on interest rates we'll go into that in quite a bit of detail because the market was manipulated on purpose, and I'll talk through that. Is a real interesting part if you're staying with me. Inflation currently at 10% at the time of speaking, or there or thereabouts. What that means for your money, what that means for your properties, what that means for your developments. The so-called cost of living crisis and what that means for people. And then we'll move on to the opportunities. So renting profitably, how to do that in this day and age with everything as it is. Time to buy. It is the time to buy. It's the first time in at least 5 years we've had a real good buyer's market. It's time to buy. It's looking good. Future market conditions and what they may be. Changes of use. Changing the use of properties and making them into more profitable spaces. Commercial property, is that looking better than ever or not, and why? Well, short term, yes. Long term, less so. Commercial to residential conversions. I love these. Really good money to be made from these if you do them right. And flips. Now is a brilliant time to be flipping property instead of renting it out. And we'll go through into that in a moment. So let's look at Section 24. Section 24 is a law brought in by George Osborne. Slight interruption there. So yes, George Osborne, he's introduced this thing called Section 24. It is a right fucker for landlords. It means that we are now paying tax on our turnover, not our profit. It came in 25% chunks over 4 years. So it does mean that landlords have to pay full tax on their rental income, not the profit. So you pay your mortgage, your fees and all of that. None of that's written off. You pay tax on the lot, and then whatever's left is your profit. And for every other business, I think in Western history, certainly in the UK, at this moment in time, it's every business pays tax on their profit. Not in this case. You have to wonder why that is and what they're doing, but. In terms of difficulties, it means that everybody's rent has to go up and has been going up 10, 15, 20% just on that, because it needs to be, get a lot of stick as landlords, and it's not very nice. People are hating on us a lot at the moment, but we need to stand firm. We create habitable spaces for people. People have places to live because of us. We are the backbone of the British economy, as much as any nurse, truck driver, bus driver, policeman, all those people and provide all those services that create the society in which we live and allow us to live easily. All live in houses, all live in flats, all live in habitable spaces, and a lot of them are renting from people like us, or even living in places that people like us built, let alone places that people like us own, like us built or converted or renovated. We need to stand firm on our feet and say, we are landlords and we are great and we do good things for people and the community, and have none of that crapping on us because other people can't afford homes and what have you. In fact, let's continue this rant a little bit more, because this is ridiculous. People say that the price of properties has gone up because landlords are buying properties. Well, let's do the maths on that. Let's do it. How much does a length of 3x2 cost? About 2.5 mil twin and earth cabling. How about a 12.5 mil soundboard or normal plasterboard or fireproof board? How about a fire system? How about fire escape windows? How about carpets, kitchens, bathrooms, taps, toilets, fittings, cookers? How much do you pay your staff? Do you pay people the minimum wage, or do you pay them less? Well, you can't, can you? Do you pay them a living wage? Do you pay your tradespeople fairly? Now, for all the extreme lefties listening to this, who are like, yes, pay people fairly and pay people, these people deserve proper wages and stuff, then that's, yeah, a good virtue to signal. That's very nice. Well done, you. When people are charging fair market rates, things cost money. How much does it cost to get a property ready to be rented, to be lived in, to be sold, to be habitable, to be in good enough condition for somebody to live, or very good condition for somebody to want to live in? The cost of things directs the price of things, and it has to be worthwhile spending money on in order for people to do it. There's no way somebody is going to spend money on refurbishing a property if at the end they're going to lose money on it. Why would they lose their money on it? Why would they put all that time and effort and heartache and difficulty and sleepless nights and all the rest of it into it? Why would they deal with staff? Why would they be chasing after tradesmen? Why would they be chasing after payments, invoices, doing accounts, taxes and everything if there wasn't a reward in it for them? Or if there wasn't a purpose to benefit them and their family? So, no, we are not responsible for first-time buyers finding it difficult. The price of things in the marketplace is responsible for that. And on a wider issue, we are going from a first, the world used to be first and third world, and many people still think it is, but it isn't. We now live in a first and second world country. It is and third world country, and the first world are the Far East states such as Dubai, Qatar. That's where the money is now. We're now in the second world, and the third world is still the African regions, Asian basin, where there's still mass poverty. But don't think, our generation is still operating like we've still got an empire. Like, things are still easy for us. Like, we can still take things from the rest of the world for cheap as chips and live quite freely and easily off of that. We cannot. And as the world comes away from using the petrodollar, the Western countries that are beholden to America, close to America, like us, are going to find that more and more harder. So it's a wider economic thing, and it certainly isn't landlords' fault that property prices go up. So trying to clear landlords out with things like Section 24 is stupid. All you're going to create is lots of homelessness, because properties do not take care of themselves. They need somebody to love them, pay attention to them, care for them, and make them and keep them habitable. And they just do. So this taxation has to be stopped at some point, and I suspect one of the big housing groups is going to have their lobbyists in the ear of the government agencies, and they will sort it out. I'm damn sure. So margins are being squeezed. Absolutely they are. When you have taxation issues like that, if you take any cost off any business, then that money comes out of the profit only. So another little pause there, but our margins are squeezed like they've not been squeezed before on our rental properties, and this is causing us, it's causing us some difficulties. When in any business you have your income section, and you have your cost section, and then you have your profit section. When you take money out of the income, it comes off 100% of the profits until say you make £20 on £100 of income, and so your costs are £80, and something makes your cost £90, then your profit, £10 extra comes all off the profits, and your profit is suddenly halved. So by adding whatever that is, 8% to your income, or 12% to your income, to your costs, you take 50% of your profits. And Section 24 has done that to landlords' incomes. It's costing a lot of money for people, and not a lot of money. It just generally it comes off the profits. And so in order to be able to continue to operate and deliver habitable spaces in a way that is worthwhile for us, we have had to raise our rents on people, because otherwise it's not worthwhile, and then we don't do it, and then people don't have places to live. So when we are talking about Section 24 and its effect, it's causing homelessness. It's causing less properties to be available for people. It's causing trouble in the marketplace, and that's why it really can't be left, and it probably won't be left for too long. How much rent to increase by to cover it is a question here, and I think that people's rents have gone up a bare minimum 10% for Section 24, more like maybe 15%, and they will continue to rise at the maximum rate for a number of years, just to cover those taxation costs that landlords are now facing. And not just private landlords, the big ones as well, the housing groups especially will be doing this. It's going to go up for everybody. Now, let's discuss this now. Inflation and war debt. We spent 400 billion on COVID. That is a wartime budget. We went to war with COVID. We did a wartime budget. And the way that governments get out of the debts caused by wartime budgets is inflation. Wartime debts are solved by inflation. If you have a 100 billion pound debt and you make your money worth half as much, then that 100 billion debt is then worth 50 billion instead of 100 billion at the new rates, because there's more money flowing through the system. That means that if you can accelerate inflation after war times or after a pandemic, then you can decrease the debt to income ratio on your country by pushing inflation. So is the inflation an accident? Probably not. Are they doing things like this? Oh, whoops, we've increased everybody's rents, now inflation's gone up, and never mind, now our government debt is less and we cannot spend more. So don't think these things are accidents, but at the same time, when they do push too hard and it makes it difficult for people to rent, then and it makes lots of homelessness and starts costing them votes, they'll cut it out, and it won't be long before that's actually the case. So that's fine, and we're actually seeing that already. We have an election coming up in the UK in, I don't know when actually, 2024, and in 2025 I think it was, the EPC rating, so the energy performance certificates on your properties, had to be a level C or above, which is it's rated A to, I think, F, but I've seen them A to E, whatever. You can get a G actually. I think I've seen a G, whatever. The energy performance ratings had to be a C or above. That was going to be the new legislation. Your energy performance rating on a property to make it to be legally rentable had to be a C or above. That was never ever going to happen, purely because, as I've just said, if you do something that causes mass issues, then the government is going to have protests and there are going to be problems. If that law came in overnight, millions of landlords would be writing to their tenants saying, I'm very sorry, but I can no longer legally house you. I'm going to have to start eviction processes because it's not viable for me to make your property level C or above. And that's not the landlord being a profiteering wanker. That's the UK housing stock not being suitable. Single skin thatch cottages, 2 up, 2 down seafront cottages with single skins, places that don't have gas, that are on oil supply, old mining town villages with their skinny houses, blocks of flats that were never built to hit the EPC rate. How are you going to do them? They need to knock them down and start again in many cases. It just isn't going to happen. And so by appeasing the Green people and telling them they were going to do this, they bought themselves some time. But now that bill has actually just missed its reading in Parliament and is not being passed. What a surprise, eh? I've been saying this for years and years and years. It won't happen, and now that's exactly where it is. Cannot happen. And the same with Section 24. If it causes mass issues quicker than the inflation can cope with it, then they will cancel it off. So we as landlords need to realise, and property developers and investors, that we are in a bigger system where a government is trying to out-inflate its COVID debt, its pandemic budget, its wartime budget, and in doing so they are accelerating inflation by adding costs on, like Section 24. And so if we ride it out, we will be okay at the end. And what we need to do is increase our rents to cover it. But don't think it's not planned or part of a bigger picture, something that we are only little wisps of. We're farts in the wind on this one. Farts in the wind. It's a bigger thing. Macroeconomics, global economics, the prosperity of the whole country as a whole. And this is just one thing they're using to manipulate their domestic market in order to cover off the money they spent on the pandemic. So the future prospects for Section 24 is it's probably going to go away, but not yet. And what that means for tenants is that their rents are going to increase, and they already have, but they're going to continue to increase. We're going to see maximum rent increases for the next 3 to 5 years minimum, just to cover these costs. So as a landlord, that means that right now it's less profitable than it was because of these taxation issues. But going forwards, as long as you are professional and we are professional and we increase our rents accordingly over the next 3 to 5 years, inflation is a double-edged sword. Our property values will rise with inflation. Okay, we've got cost of living and mortgage costs and other things that will hit the property prices a little bit right now, but in an inflating market, the property prices inflate too. So we're going to see our property prices rise 10, 15, 20. In fact, next 3 to 5 years, 20 to 30% easily because of this inflation now. Our assets are not as liquid. Property assets are not liquid. Money is liquid. You go in and out of your bank account, in and out of your hand very quickly, just like that. Property takes time to buy, renovate, sell. They're legal processes. It's a unit in the ground with no legs or wheels or wings. It ain't gonna fucking move. And because of that, it follows more slowly. So as inflation increases, property prices might stay where they are, go down a little bit as people react. But then the property prices will track after that inflation and go right back up. So if you've got property or you're buying property now, in 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 years time, people will be asking you how lucky, or telling you how lucky you were that you got property now. How lucky you were because the prices have gone up so much since then. Actually, no, you just know. You listened to the Martin Howard Property Podcast and you know because I told you. That's why. So the next challenge that we're facing are tenant fee bans. These are absolutely ludicrous, some of the most stupid things you could ever see in your life. If a tenant loses their key, can't get in at 2 a.m, and wants you to call out a locksmith to let them in, you can't bill them for that. So but there is a good reason for this ban. Misuse of things by agents. Agents used to be charging tenants fees for just booking a property. So you want to move into a property, you need to pay this agency fee, that agency fee, this administration fee, this deposit, this, that, and the other. It was getting out of hand. There are letting agents that aren't very good. and they profiteer. But not only do they do that to tenants, they do it to landlords as well. So they'll say, like, they go out for a maintenance inspection, they find like a rubber seal on a window is slightly gone, or a little bit of carpet is frayed. They'll be, new carpet from my supplier with X amount added on as my kickback. And they were doing that to tenants as well, and it was making it really hard for people to live. The outcome of that was the tenant fee bans, and now we're all paying for these assholes effectively, because we now have to charge more rent again to cover these risks. We've had tenants in properties, you know, I've had one move into a house, pays first month's rent and deposit, and never pay another penny. Took 6 months to get him out. 6 months. Landlord not happy. Mortgage payments going out every month. And for what? Because he was basically paying for them to live in his house for free. And they used to ring up and say, our drain is blocked. Like, what? So you're not paying and you're blocking the drain. Can't charge them for that. Have to clear it for them. Legally have to keep it habitable for them. It's the only industry. Imagine not paying for your hire car, they're ringing up and saying it's broken down, and the hire car company coming out to fix it for you, paying for that, and it's not even the car breaks down. Say they burst the tyres and it's their fault, and then make you come and fix it because you've got a rental agreement that you haven't paid for, and legally the hire company has to. That's the situation landlords are in with this tenant fee ban. So we need now to charge more to cover risks. Over a portfolio of properties, that's another 10% minimum on every property, just because of that. So if you're a tenant watching this, your bill every month, your rent bill, when you're saying landlords this, that and the other, my rent bill's too high, about 10-15% of your rent bill is because of this. And you take that away and act reasonably with us, and then those rents won't stay that high. We have to pay for these things. They come off the profits, which, as I've just explained, is, you know, you can take half the profits with like a 12% increase in costs in that example I gave. Like, profits are things that we use to reinvest. If you're a tenant and your boiler goes and you need a new boiler, the landlord's paying for that. Say it costs him $2,500. There's got to come out of some income somewhere. It's got to come out of profits. And if you're taking profits from landlords because you've got tenant fee bans and unfair taxation and eviction bans and things like that, that's costing money across the portfolio on other properties, then the landlord might say, actually, no, I can't house you anymore. They're not going to fix that boiler. You need to move out. I'll serve you notice, but move as quick as you can. This is and has been happening to a lot of people, and it will get more so. But we do need to increase our rents because of this. And so if you're one of those housing groups as well, Generation Rent, Shelter, I'm looking at you, and you've campaigned for these things, you are supposed to be anti-homelessness charities, and all you do is cause a shitload of homelessness. That's not very clever, is it? It's not very smart at all. So I don't even know what to say to you about that. It's just not clever. So we need to charge more to cover the risk. Right, so I've paused, had my lunch, and I'm back recording the podcast again. So as per the tenant fee ban, what we need to do to cover the risk is charge more, and we are doing that as landlords across our portfolio. And to mitigate risks on these tenant fee bans, another thing we have to do is raise the level of tenants we have. So we must have better credit checks, better affordability checks, better references than ever before. That means if you're a tenant and you've had some hardship in the past, or you may be on benefits because you've given birth, or anything like that, you are going to find it much harder to rent now, because we have to mitigate risks against people by having people that are much better rated than maybe you are. And it's just the way that it is with these bans in place. So to mitigate risks as landlords, because of the fee ban on tenant fees, we have to reference them with the previous landlords. We have to have higher levels of credit checks. We must really pay attention to them as well. I'm not allowed to say this, but I will say this, right? We are not allowed to discriminate, but damn right we bloody do. If you've got fat children, we're judging you based on that. Those kids in your care that you look after, that you're wholly responsible for, if they're fat, it's because of you, and you can't take care of them. You're not going to be able to take care of the house, are you? Because of the tenant fee ban, we're going to be much more likely to pay attention to things like that. If you've got a scrotty pet that you don't look after, it says a lot about you. If you are a little bit filthy, unwashed, dirty clothes, not well kept, we're paying attention to that now, because if we get scrotty people in our houses, we can't charge them anymore. If they're blocking the drains with wet wipes, we have to pay for that, and it's not our fault. So to mitigate risks as landlords, we have to pay attention to these things now. We must look at people, how the people they care for, the pets they care for are. Look at the state of them themselves. Give them a sniff. And it's because of the tenant fee ban, we have to do things like that now, even though we're not allowed to. Anybody that tells you that they don't is a liar. They're spending hundreds of thousands of pounds on properties. They are 100% checking out the people they put in those properties. They're checking your social media as well. If you're posting that you're out on some protest gluing yourself to roads, ain't nobody going to rent to you. Imagine having that sort of person in your house. My right's this, my right's that. You'll never make a penny profit. We are paying attention to that as landlords, and you need to be aware as tenants that because of these difficulties that we have now with evictions and fees and bans and all of this, we are paying attention to this more than ever. If you're posting about even your mental health, I've had a landlord do this. He's looked through a potential tenant that we chose for him. Social media found she was posting about difficulties and days and things like that. He said, she's not going to be a stable tenant, get another one. So they do this. They've been doing it for years, and now it's more than ever. So don't shoot the messenger. Hate the game, not the player, as it were. Hate the player, not the game. Whatever. We have to do this stuff. We just do. So this is why a good letting agent is important, because they will filter out the idiots before they start. In our lettings brands, Hello New Home for properties in South Wales, Hello My Room for HMOs in South Wales and South West, and Somerset Lettings is South Western brand. We filter tenants out so easily. We give them a form to fill in, and we make it overly complicated. I always used to do this when I was hiring staff as well. We could make it overly when I'm hiring staff, if you come for a job interview with me, you'll be sat across a desk from me, and I will have your chair low as it can possibly go, bent right forwards, so it's really awkward for you to sit. And I want to see if you put that chair back into a comfortable position, or if you sit the whole interview like that. It tells me a lot about you. I want to make it difficult for you, and then I'll catch you off guard as well. I'll finish the formal interview process and the questions I am allowed to ask. I'll walk you around the facility or wherever it is you might be working and chat to you about family and life and stuff. Questions I'm not allowed to ask. I'll soon find out about you, believe me I will. And again, with agents, we filter tenants so hard now because of all these bans, because of these restrictions, because of everything. So we give you difficult forms to fill out that take a while. They've got information we don't need, because we're trying to filter you. We're trying to figure out what you are, who you are, how you live, whether you're going to cause us trouble down the line or not. And for our landlords, that means that most of the time they have really good tenants, because we've done this. We've caused them at the end of the day, if you can't spell correctly or fill out a form properly, or you turn up smelling, or you've got people in your care or pets in your care that you don't look after, or you can't talk, like, all right, geezer, mate, yeah, chav, then, and we've met them all, right? You ain't getting rented to. If your social media is full of stuff about your rights and not your responsibilities and protest this and sad days that and all the rest of it, you ain't going to get a rental house. So yes, it shouldn't be like that, but no, these tenant fee bans make it so that we have to be like this. And a good agent is massively important, because a good lettings agent will filter people, and they will filter out most of the dickheads quite easily. So for those on my TikTok live, I've got a presentation in front of me. I'm recording for my YouTube and my podcast and a TikTok live and a video. I'm doing 4 things at once. It's absolutely brilliant stuff. Efficiency. So setting the tenants' expectations from the start. Oh, my video just dropped. From the start, we set expectations with tenants. We are professionals. We are in a professional relationship with our tenants. They're not our friends, and we need to make that clear from the beginning. I tell them all, we will help you whenever you need it. If your boiler goes, we are there. If the roof has an issue, we are there. If you need help changing a light bulb, you'll be gone. Is that fair? So we have those tenants in place. Every single one of our tenants knows they need to deal with their own shit most of the time until it gets serious. A lot of tenants with damp issues cause them themselves by not venting their properties and turning on tumble dryers and cooking pasta and drying clothes on radiators. A lot of damp is actually mold, and a lot of the mold is, it's condensation, and that is because of the way people are living in the houses. It's your own fault. So I tell tenants before they move in, if you get these issues, 9 times out of 10 we are going to blame you and you're going to deal with it. But when you do need us, we'll be there like no other agent will be. We'll be there straight away. And because we have that expectation we set with our tenants, not only as landlords and developers and investors, but also as owners of or letting agent brands, because we set that, our landlords are very, very happy most of the time, because our tenants don't cause nearly as much shit as other people do. We do a good job there. So the other thing that we're facing in the challenges as landlords are eviction restrictions and bans. If you are in Scotland, you're not allowed to evict people at the moment, which is ridiculous. Tenants can stop paying their rent right now. Nothing you can do about that. Nothing you can do. I think till March, but it's been ongoing for like 6 months. Careful, people, when your rights are taken by governments because of danger, as we know from a group called the Nazi Party, you never really get those rights back. You will not get those rights back. So watch out for that. And we've had rights taken away from us in terms of who we house, when we house, how much we house for. We're not going to get them back easily. So in Wales, it's very difficult to evict people. We've had a tenant move in a property in Wales, pay first month's rent and deposit, never pay another penny. And because of the eviction ban, it's 6 months before you can actually start moving that fucker out. 6 months of mortgage payments, letting agent payments, interest payments, all sorts. And these things cost money. These things affect by your rent. Your rent goes up because of people like this, because if we can kick these fuckers out, then we can charge less across our properties. But while we can't do this, the risk is higher, the costs are higher, and therefore your prices are higher. Now, I've done this in a different example, but if the government put out a scheme that said everybody gets £20 worth of free food a week, just go and take it from the shelves of the supermarket, there's nothing they can do about it, because food is a human right, just like they say shelter is a human right, then the prices of all your food at the supermarket will go up, because in order to sustain the staff, the electrics, their heating, the trucks, the farmers, everything that goes into producing your food, because that is effectively taken off them free of charge, they will have to charge more for the rest. This is why rents are going up, because of eviction restrictions and bans and things like that. Wales, it's difficult, 6 months and then you can start the process. England, a bit quicker. Scotland, ban full stop. Scotland has lost £700 million worth of new housing developments. £700 million because of these types of tenant fee bans. And that is going to be causing every person that is homeless in Scotland right now is homeless because of that. £700 million would wipe the face off it, if those houses were built. It would be done. And Scotland's a cold fucking place. It's a cold place. It's not a nice thing to have. You've got to ask yourself questions when the countries like North Korea and Libya have no homelessness and we do, and we're doing things to restrict people from providing properties like that. It's bonkers. So the COVID era rules are here to stay. As I previously said, if a government takes rights away citing some sort of danger, they never really give them back unless we riot. So I think those rules are here to stay. They're not going to be wound back all the way, that's for sure. So the costs for us to run properties for you to live in have gone up, so have the risks, and therefore so have the prices. So when you talk about rents going up, yeah, they are, and they have to, because of eviction restrictions and bans. By the way, we need regulating as landlords. There are some wankers out there. We do need regulation, and we do need control, and we do need frameworks. Helps us operate within them. There are some horrible landlords that have done some horrible things to some tenants that didn't deserve it. We need control, and those people need to be held to account. But what we also need is the freedom that when these people do move in, don't pay their rent, smash up our properties, cause tens of thousands of pounds worth of damage, we need to be able to kick them out. We need to be able to give them the boot. We need to be able to remove them. Otherwise, our costs go up, and so do your rents. So when you are listening to these charities, Generation Rent, Shelter and others, and they're acting like they're helping you, they're not, because we are the people that house you, not them. And if they're making it more difficult for us to house people and more costly, then they are directly increasing your costs. And that's just the simple fact of it. Mitigations. So as landlords, investors, developers, we can take out insurances, and I love these. We actually provide insurances with our properties to our landlords, and if a tenant stops paying rent for any reason, it covers 75% of the cost. Costs a fair bit per month. That's added onto the rent bill, believe it or not. And we now have a set of criteria that's higher than I think anybody else, because to hit the criteria for this insurance, the tenants have to have a bang on perfect credit rating, amazing affordability checks. You need to pass all sorts of highly stringent criteria so we can get the insurance out on those tenants. That means, again, that if you are a tenant without a perfect credit score, without a perfect history, without a really good income, how the fuck are you going to rent a place when you're creating a marketplace like this? Because of these issues with tenant fee bans and restrictions, as landlords, we have to have security. And to get security, that means we have to raise the people that we have in our properties, and that means that people who have had hardships are going to get unduly fucked, and that's not fair. Society as a whole should be providing housing for everybody, and we would like to, but we need to be secure when we do it, and the rules at the moment and the legislation at the moment means that we cannot, do not want to, means we cannot, physically cannot. So the mitigations we are taking at the moment are rent insurance, rent guarantee insurance policies. If you want that and you're renting out properties, my letting agent brands are superb. Again, Hello New Home for Hello New Home for South Wales, Somerset Lettings for Somerset, and Hello My Room for HMO rooms across the South Wales and Somerset. Oh wait, okay, we don't take out tenant guarantee insurance on the HMO rooms, but it's there and we do use it now. And good agents are the absolute key to these eviction restrictions and bans. A good agent can sniff out somebody very well most of the time. You never get rid of them all fully, but by asking difficult questions, by making it awkward to apply for properties, by giving them specific time slots to turn up for, which I know is normal, but actually making them adhere to that, by, agents send out reminders for viewings, and we do that, but sometimes I wonder if we should stop, because I want them to forget, because the ones that forget to even turn up for their viewing are definitely not the sort of people we want in our houses. And again, and this is, I should not be saying this, I'm not allowed to say this, I'm breaking some sort of law. As agents, landlords, investors and developers, we are looking at you. We are looking at you in ways that we should not be, because our security is at risk. And I don't like it. It shouldn't be like that. But we're looking at your social profiles. We're looking at how the pets and children in your care are kept. We are looking at how you're kept. We are listening to how you speak. We are observing how you fill in forms. We are seeing if you can fucking spell or not. We're seeing how you communicate. We're checking references like never before. And good agents will cover all of that without getting you into legal trouble by saying it on a podcast. But we do. We have to, because we've got properties to take care of, and we can't kick out these people out when we get them. So we have to look right through people, right through them. So rent increase legislation is another thing that we're battling at the moment. England, Scotland and Wales have different levels. England, I think you can raise the rents however much you want. Scotland, rent fee increase ban. Mortgage rates have gone up for landlords, and you can't evict, and you can't increase rents. Many of them now out of profit, gone in losses, and they're having to pay for different things when they happen in properties, and they can't sell, and that's what socialism does for you. The outcome of that, already £700 million worth of developments has been stopped But that's just the developments of new build sites. Imagine how many renovations, refurbishments and things like that are happening in Scotland now compared to what there could be. That there's going to, you will be paying. Do you know, in Ireland, a flat came, we've got Irish friends. My wife's sat over there. She brought her Irish friend over in the summer. Had a lovely time there, brilliant. Showing me queues for a Justin Bieber had turned up at a cafe. No, sorry, not Justin Bieber turned up at a cafe. A 1-bed flat had been made available. Yeah, it did look like that. A 1-bed flat had been made available, and there people had been queuing probably overnight by the looks of it. They certainly had sleeping bags and camping mats, and it went back miles just to get a viewing. Because they made it so difficult for people to rent houses that it became not profitable, so people stopped doing it, and now there's no fucking housing. This is what's happening in Scotland as well. Not long before you see queues like that in Scotland now, given that you can't do those, you can't increase rents, you can't evict tenants, and you can't sell up. I mean, what did they think the outcome of that was going to be, really? And Wales, I think Wales have got the law right on this one. 8% a year is what they've set the limit at. Now that's difficult for us at the moment, but overall I accept that's reasonable because there are some unscrupulous landlords taking the absolute piss, and like I said before, we do need regulation and control because of those people. 8% a year in a world where there's 10% inflation and mortgage rates are going up and other things isn't the end of the world. We can swallow that as long as we do 8% a year for the next 3-4 years, because your rents are going up 24, 30%, 32%, 34%, whatever it is. They are going up that much because of all these costs and increases. They will have to. But in that staged way in Wales, I think that's fine. Absolutely fine. So the mitigations we can take out as landlords, by the way, are again, well, firstly, as professionals, we must be increasing our rents every year in good times and in bad. Sending a letter out to our tenants, our costs have gone up a little bit. You'll be paying 2.5%, 3% extra. And we need to do that every single year, good year, bad year, whatever, because we need to be ready for the rainy day. Let's say every 20 years a roof needs replacing across a portfolio of 10 houses. If you've not been increasing your rent every year across those 10 houses, where's the money coming from for that? How many boilers across those 10 houses will go in that time? How many damp issues will you get? How many fences will fall down? How many tenants that don't pay will happen? Every year, the process should be in place. We're renewing your tenancy for another year. Thank you for being a great tenant. Your new price the next year is X plus 2.5%. So that's the main mitigation you can take against rent increase legislation, is increasing it as much as you can, or a reasonable amount every year, so that when these things do happen, you have a buffer in place. Another thing we can do, unless you're in Scotland, is evict people and then relet a property. In Wales, that's a particularly good idea. 8% increase might not cover what we need to cover with Section 24 taxation, with inflation, with mortgage rates increasing. We might then go into losses, and in losses there's no point in running a business. So the best way in Wales would be to evict people. Yes, and I'm the only person to tell you the truth, by the way. If you're a tenant watching this, it's your own fucking fault. Well, it's not your fault, but it's when you're clamoring and saying hate on landlords, this is the outcome. So do you know what? I am a centrist politically, according to Political Spectrum, but at the moment the world is so far left that I look like a far righter, but I'm actually a centrist. If you are one of those far left crazy loons that is clamoring for shitting on all the rich people provide all of your stuff, all of it, everything. The 1 square mile of London pays for 50% of the taxes, 52%, and you want to clear them out. That's 52% of the you make it so it's not possible to bank in central London. Where they go in? Where are they going? Well, they're going to Singapore, Hong Kong, whatever. And then 52% of those taxes are gone. We've got half the NHS, half the police, half the services, half the roads, half the council, half the elderly care. It kicks down the line. So in terms of Wales, where we've got 8% increase maximum, eviction and reletting is probably the best way of increasing your rent. In fact, it's the only legal way of increasing your rents a decent amount, and no fault evictions might be the solution for us to get around this. So how long will this rent increase legislation last? Could be a little while. It could be a little while. Certainly will stay for a period. And like I said before, when governments take rights, they very rarely, if ever, give them back. When they took rights away from landlords because of COVID, we're unlikely to get them back. They will always cite safety reasons, then they never give the rights back. This is just a historical fact. Another thing that we are facing are interest rate issues. Interest rate rises have caused the cost of our finance to rise, which means it costs more to run properties. I think we're now able to get, they went and back down a bit, 4.4% interest rates on a buy-to-let mortgage. Okay, that's actually, in historical context, a reasonable amount of money. We have been given free money for so long, and our advantages as property investors was it allowed us to put a lot of money into the marketplace because the money was free. It allowed us to keep rents relatively low because the money was effectively free with the record low interest rates we had after the 2008 crash. From a macro perspective, this pound sterling is, I think, the oldest currency in the world. Every fiat currency dies, and us and the United States dollars is dying. Having years of zero interest rates is just propping up a currency that is it's not far to be gone now. We're going to see some bit of a turmoil around that, and they'll bring in the CBDC, central bank digital currencies around that. But in terms of historical context, the interest rates we're facing right now aren't actually very big at all. They've been much higher, much higher, and we need, as landlords, investors and developers, to deal with the interest rates as they are now. 4.4, 4.5, 4.6% on a limited company buy-to-let standard product is where we're looking at the moment. But those on trackers that have been a bit over base rate, that are now ending their 2-year, 5-year term, they're going to be paying more than that. Those costs are going onto your rental incomes or your rental amounts, and they have to, otherwise it's not profitable to run the property, and the landlord will send you a letter saying, I can no longer rent my property to you, I'm going to sell it, get the fuck out. So interest rates, are they here to stay? Yeah, probably around 4.5%, because that's, at the end of the day, I think that's a reasonable amount. I think we've settled on a reasonable amount. Certainly we can't go back to the days of boom and bust and 18% this, and or banks not making any money on their money and renting it, loaning it out at 0, 1, 2, 3%, whatever. That's not viable either. So it's about right. Inflation is another headwind that we are facing. Currently it's about 10%. 10% is a massive amount of inflation. It means that if you've got £100,000, it will lose £10,000 worth of value in a year. That means your £100,000 will only be able to buy £90,000 worth of products in 12 months' time. You still say £100,000 in the bank, but the price of the products and the services and everything in the economy has gone up. That is eroded 10% of the value of your money. Inflation erodes value of money, and I said earlier, inflation is actually done on purpose by the government to pay off war debt. So if you have a pandemic debt of £400 billion because you shut an economy down for COVID, then in order to make that 400 billion worth half as much, you just inflate the value of a currency by twice, and then you only have the equivalent of 200 billion to pay off. Do it again and it's 100 billion to pay off. Governments pay off war debt through inflation, so they're doing it on purpose. Don't think for a second that the cost of living crisis is an accident. They're doing it on purpose to pay off their debts. And that's how governments operate. So yes, we have an issue with Russia and oil at the moment. Now, I'm of the belief that biting Russia in the arse is not a good idea. I'm also, it's not of the belief. The facts of the matter are that there are and have been American missiles on Russia's border for a long time, And Russia said, don't put them there on that border with the Ukraine because we'll have to go in. And they said, don't, because we'll have to go in. And they said, don't, because we'll have to go in. And then they did. So, and also that war is 8 years old. That war started in 2014. I don't know why we're getting all uppity about it now. I mean, yes, we're seeing mass inflation because of Russia and oil, but don't think for a second that we're free of blame on that. That war started in 2014. You remember the Malaysia airline flight that went down over Ukraine and we blamed Russia for? That was because of that war. That was. Actually, as a little bit of a rant, if we're doing weapon sales as a portion of guilt, then we are fucked. We sell more weapons than anybody to some of the worst regimes in the world that cause utter atrocities. So we shouldn't be doing that. Another thing on the oil thing is the United States. The United States are now selling us products, commodities at 4 times the rate that we got them for before. They have secured massive amounts of liquid natural gas from the wars they enacted in Iraq, Syria, Libya, Afghanistan. The United States secured a big supplies of liquefied natural gas. Then Nord Stream 2 blew up. Oh no. And now we're having to buy it off them at 4 times the price. So you think inflation's an accident and Russia's not our friend and America is? Well, they're taking the fucking piss out of us. And either that pipeline blew up underneath an American warship by somebody else without them noticing that they were there, or the Americans did it. The warship was on that spot. There's no denying that. So when we're looking at this mass inflation, it was done on purpose. It was done to pay off the COVID debt. And when we're talking about fuel price rises, it's the Americans that have caused that for us by doing these things. So printing money for COVID as well. When you print money, you devalue it. So when we printed billions and billions, hundreds of billions, it was always going to cause mass inflation. If you see any of my social media posts at the start, I was absolutely clear. We have to be sure because we're going to cost a lot of money. Our NHS will be crippled for decades to come by the bill we are paying for what we did during COVID. And it was never, ever clear that that was going to have a net benefit on deaths. Ever. And when we're paying off these debts and we've got less nurses, less scanners, less drugs, less treatments, less doctors, less social care, because we're paying off what we did for COVID, 400 billion, that's costing lives. And if you don't think it's costing lives, what the fuck do you think every doctor, nurse, pill does? We didn't think this through. We didn't certainly look at the consequences. And when you look at the comments from people that run things like Sage, they never looked at the consequences of spending the money, only what a lockdown would achieve with their models done by Neil Ferguson. Neil Ferguson and the University College London team, who also gave us things like the ice caps will be melted by 2000 with the same models. Bird flu will end us all. Mad cow's disease will end us all. They're crazy. They're worse than conspiracy. I'm more accurate. No, Mystic Meg is more accurate than Dr. Neil Ferguson and his computer models. Why the fuck we use them to shut down our entire economy? I don't know. He's got a history of being wrong about everything, every time, by a fucking mile. Not even close. I'm going to see Mystic Meg. He's better. She's better. Whoops. Assumed gender. So also on inflation, we have the 4 names. Sunak, Truss, Boris and Keir. We had Boris. He was a dick, but he could run things a little bit. Then we had Truss. Now, the Truss, Sunak and Keir thing is something we need to pay attention to because inflation's affected directly by them. So we spent 400 billion on COVID. Liz Truss got in and said, I'm going to spend 40 billion on tax cuts. The bankers didn't like that. The bankers wanted Sunak. The bankers crashed the fuck out of our economy. Remember the pound crashing? How the fuck did the pound crash for 40 billion pounds worth of tax cuts versus a 400 billion pound COVID spend that didn't crash the pound? Think it through. Why did a potential tax cut do that? It's because the bankers wanted Sunak. They've installed Sunak. They have Sunak in place. He's unelected. He's never going to win another election. He's never going to win an election, full stop. He's unelected. Nobody chose him. He's there to install World Economic Forum type things into our system, and then Keir Starmer will take over. Keir Starmer will fuck things for landlords even more. Some of the rent reforms that Labour are looking at putting in will cause massive amounts of homelessness. Massive. So we're going to go through 4 leaders in a few years. We had Boris, who had it relatively under control but just liked to party. And by the way, let's do that. Forget the rules. Forget the rules. You have a fat, old, unhealthy, unfit man, right, who is got better data than anybody else in the country. Was he acting scared like something could kill him? Don't worry about the rules. Think about this. The person who knew more than everybody else because he has access to everything is the Prime Minister, who's fat, old, unhealthy, all these things that would make him at risk of if he caught COVID. Was he acting like he was at risk? Was he avoiding other people? No, he's having parties. That should tell you everything. And not just Boris, all the world leaders fly around the world, do their meetings, no masks, shaking hands. Angela Merkel, look at the state of her. She looks like that fucker out of Star Wars. Is it Jabba the Hutt? Jabba the fucking Hutt. She's at risk of catching something and dying, right? Because she's not a healthy person. She's flying around the world, shaking hands. Don't think for a second that what they were telling you is real. In fact, we've had Rishi Sunak, who was whatever minister at the time, coming out and admitting they were doing marketing campaigns and things to convince us whilst they were having parties. We're going to go from Mr. Boris to Truss, who effectively did nothing wrong but pissed off the bankers, who then crunched our pound in order to oust her and get in their man, which is Sunak. Oh yeah, billionaire banker installed above our heads. What could possibly go wrong? And because he's already doing a Gordon Brown and fucking everything, we're going to end up with Labour. We're going to end up with Keir Starmer in charge, and the rent reform things and the inflation will kick on from there, because Labour don't know how to hold the purse strings, let's be honest. And if you look at the NHS in Wales, where they do run it, it's cringeworthy. So your money in the bank is getting eroded, and it will continue to be eroded because of the political status that we're in. At the end of the day, the government is trying to pay off its debt by inflating its currency. They're doing it on purpose. We're having a series of leaders that are causing inflation, and the one we had that would bring the economy back was ousted by the bankers so they could have what they wanted, which was the inflation, which is the cost of living crisis. So if you've got 100 grand in the bank, it's going to be worth 90 grand in a year's time. 10% inflation is eroding your money that quickly. So inflation is also at speed. So your cash will devalue quickly. Your property will value more slowly. Liquid assets move quickly. Cash in your hand goes in and out of your hand. In your bank account goes in and out of your bank account. Property moves more slowly. No wings, no wheels, no legs. It can't move. It's where it is. It takes time. It takes legal processes. It moves slowly. So it holds value better. It's like an insulator. It holds back value better. And as inflation increases, there's cost of living crisis. It will affect the house prices. They're probably going to go down a chunk. But then because we have mass inflation, the prices will then rise to match that. So if you're buying a property now, in 2, 3, 4, 5 years time, people will be saying to you, you got a property at a really good price. The price have gone up 20, 30% since then. How did you know when to buy? Because it's fucking obvious. Because you listen to this podcast, that's why. It is a time to buy property better than ever, because inflation will drag the price of your properties up in the end. And now is a really good time to buy. Another headwind that we're facing as investors, developers, are the cost of living crisis. Household bills are going up. People are finding it harder to live. The affordability is becoming more and more difficult for people. So for us as landlords and letting agents, we have to do more stringent checks on people than ever before. And again, if you're finding it hard to rent somewhere because you've not got a perfect credit score, sorry, but we have to de-risk ourselves. And to do that, we have to choose more carefully who we allow into our property. It just is how it is. Now, we can get insurance on existing tenants, and we do and have done this. So if you are a landlord and you want to de-risk yourself for a small monthly fee, message me, because our letting agent brands do this, and we will put insurance on your tenants with you, of course. We have it in-house. We do this every day. And it's not that much money actually, but it just works a treat. And we will need to re-credit check your tenants. They will need to sign forms and all the rest of it. But if they do pass, it take a little bit off your profits, but it'll give you that security that your rent is covered, or at least 75% of it if they stop paying, and the insurance covers off getting the rent payments back, evicting them if you have to, everything. Even 2 months of your property being empty between getting rid of them and the next one. It's a great policy that we operate at Somerset Lettings, Hello New Home, and Hello My Room. So choosing who we rent to, I've gone over that many times. We are stringent as fuck nowadays. We're checking your socials. Your affordability checks have got harder. We're making it difficult for you to apply. The forms are difficult. We're being awkward. We're asking you awkward questions, and we're doing it on purpose because we need to find out about tenants before they go in. It's simple as that. So those, and I've done an hour on this, are the headwinds we're facing. Those are the difficulties. For those on TikTok Live, this is a presentation, podcast, YouTube video called How to Invest in Property in 2023, and I've just done the headwinds that we're facing. An hour on them because there's a lot of them. But now we're doing the opportunities. Now we're doing the positive stuff. And the opportunities are that we can rent profitably. We can do so. Yeah, we've got to raise the rates and do it, but it is possible, and the marketplace still allows us to operate profitably, which means it's still worthwhile doing. It's a better time than it has been in at least the last 5 years to buy property. There has not been a better time to buy than now. There's less competition, more people are leaving, landlords are exiting the market, they're even selling their tenanted properties. It's a brilliant time to buy, absolutely brilliant. Got a nice cup of coffee there. The future market conditions are looking good as well. So we have all these issues: tenant fee bans, eviction bans, interest rates high, inflation high. They're all going to come off maybe over the next year or so, year and a half. In fact, let's be honest, when's our next election due? 2024? They're going to wipe it off just before that, aren't they? So we're at the start of 2023 now. In about a year and a half's time, these things will come off, and it'll become living will become a lot easier for people as we approach the election cycle. And as that happens, our profit margins will go back up. So what we're looking at, if we're doing rentals right now, are short-term financial products, maybe 2-year fixed mortgages, so that we can remortgage in a couple of years. When inflation has dragged the price of our properties up, so we can take more money out, and the interest rates come back down to a more reasonable level. This is going to be a good time for us if we buy now and we ride that time period out. These are opportunities for us. We need to go and buy when the market is doing the opposite. Change of use is another opportunity. If we can take a property and turn it into something else, we can add value to it if we do it right. And change of use is an amazing opportunity right now. Commercial property is also a great opportunity right now when done right. You have to be careful of technology. Lots of people are not working from offices anymore. I'm working from my house. I don't need an office. How many people are like that? So yes, commercial property, but no, you have to do it right. And commercial to residential conversions, we do these, we specialize in these, we love these. In terms of pounds per square foot, the profits you can generate from them are ridiculously good, and we like them a lot. And flips, buying properties that are in a state, doing them up and selling them is a really, really smart strategy right now. I'm going to go into those in more detail. So firstly, renting profitably. Buy-to-let is not as profitable as it was, but single lets, which are where you rent one property as a whole rather than a shared house, are still the bread and butter and the backbone of the British economy. They just are. Whatever happens, people need places to live, and without places to live, there are riots and problems, and therefore there will always be a marketplace under which making places available to live is viable. So it's not as profitable as it was, but it will come back. And when we're increasing our prices in line with inflation, and then the other market forces come back towards us, buy-to-let will again be much more viable. And as long as you are taking advantage as well of the capital appreciation that you will be getting during these times of inflation, you will be fine. HMOs, I love HMOs. HMOs are houses of multiple occupation. I don't know why they take the O out. They're homos, aren't they? Not HMOs. Homos. Fuck it out, sorry. Homos, shared houses, brilliant. If you can take a property and turn it into a shared house, so you're renting out 5 rooms or 6 rooms or 7 rooms rather than one house as a whole, then you're making more money. You need to pack more people in more tightly than ever before, and the reason is all the reasons listed above. Serviced accommodation operators are full of shit. Let's be straight and clear about that. The rent-to-rent people that are trying to rent people's properties, put them on Airbnb, telling them that they've got corporate clients, are lying through their teeth. They're not telling you the truth at all. There are a couple of companies that have semi-permanent or permanent staff full-time with accounts and account managers that deal with corporate clients. You renting an apartment of somebody and doing it up and thinking you can get corporate contracts, no, ain't happening. You're not competing with those people. You cannot. You put it on Airbnb, and then you've got a cyclical business that's doing well in the summer and not in the winter, and the occupancy rates people advertise are absolutely bonkers, and the nightly rates people advertise are also absolutely bonkers. Now, there are a few good serviced accommodation people, but most of them are full of shit. And if you watch my short form videos on TikTok, and I think I put them on Instagram as well, you'll see where I pull apart. I see these serviced accommodation deals posted every day, and I talk about them. I pull them apart and tell you the truth on them and how much money you'll actually be making, because it's not hard. You can go on Airbnb, pick a similar property, look at the nightly rate, look at how many nights it's booked for, because you can see when you can book it, and you can say, well, that guy's got 17% occupancy rate over the next 3 months. 17, and somebody's advertising 70 as something that will make them £100 a night when the others are charging £50 a night. It is that crazy. So watch out for those serviced accommodation people, particularly those selling courses. Oftentimes they're lying to you for your money, and the reason they're selling courses is because they're not making money out of their serviced accommodation units. I'll say it before and I'll say it again. I have been to one of the large training organizations, the serviced accommodation training specialist, whilst he was chatting away and selling his course, did not know that I was on Airbnb finding him, looking at his properties. At that time he had 7 properties on Airbnb with a 4% booking rate going forwards. So then I went on Company's House and found out that his training business was paying for his serviced accommodation units to stay open whilst selling serviced accommodation training courses. Yeah. So another advantage of increasing rents, of renting profitably, are increasing rents in line with inflation. Yeah, we have to do this, but not just in line with inflation, also in line with costs. And when we've got these unfair taxation, and we've got these tenant fee bans, and we've got these eviction bans, then your rents have to go up disproportionately, and they will. And across those 3 things, we're talking 40-50%. So if your rent was £600 a month over the next, or even already started, but let's say the next 2-3 years, you're going to end up to £900, £950, just because those are the situations that we're in now. And that you've caused those costs, simple as that. If you didn't argue against landlords and you didn't shit on us for providing you with housing, and you went after Tesco's because food's a human right, rather than going after landlords saying shelter is a human right, then you're, but whatever. Spread the hate, pay for it, simple as that. Insurances, again, we do provide insurances. Rent guarantee insurance, we use it as many times as we can now, and we have to, because people are finding it difficult. And that's one way of renting profitably, is paying the rent guarantee insurance. Then we're secure in our knowledge as landlords that we're getting paid whatever happens, as long as we hit our criteria. We have to provide habitable spaces, we have to do certain things, we have to be legally compliant, but otherwise our insurances won't pay out. So it is a flipping brilliant time to buy. It's the first great buyer's market in the last 5 years. We're going to see 20-30% increase in the values of our properties in the next 5 years. It doesn't matter about Highland. It doesn't matter about it doesn't matter about inflation. eroding the value of our money if it's in assets, because inflation brings everything up. We might lose a little bit of value in our properties now with the cost of living crisis. We might lose a little bit of value with the property market going down a bit. But if inflation is carrying on as it is, then our properties will rise with them in time. So buy now, and the next 5 years you just raise value anyway, which is actually a great way of making money. You could buy a shithole for, say, £100,000, not do anything with it, and then in 3-4 years time sell it for 120, 130, having not spent a penny on it, just left your money in there. It's just like having a bank interest rate, that really. It's also, we're going to be doing very well when the rent and legislation and inflation issues stabilise, and they will stabilise. They have to. They can't continue like this. And when they do, it's going to be good for the people that buy now. So it is a really great time to buy. And then if you are in property for the short term, then you are an idiot and you probably should go somewhere else. Property is a long-term game, and when you look at it longer term, it's looking really, really good. So yes, there are more difficulties for us as landlords, investors and developers now than there were, but no, they won't stay forever. And now because those problems exist now, we're having a great time to buy. So if there's cash available, it's a good time to buy these things. Another opportunity for us, change of use. Change of use is where you take a use of one building and turn it into another use. Take a restaurant and turn it into a house, for example. It's one of the best ways to make money in property, because front center retail units have a price per square foot or square meter that's similar to residential, but just behind the front shop front you're talking about sort of 40% of the value, and then when you're in the back and upstairs in the stock rooms you're talking about 10% of the value. If you make that all into 100% value residential space, then you are making money, as long as you develop it efficiently. So we look for spaces that are old, wrecked, difficult, and we're looking at pounds per square meter, pounds per square foot, and then we're looking at what we can convert those, how we can convert those. And you need windows, you need access, you need fire escapes, you need to qualify these buildings in all types of ways. But one of the best ways to make money is by changing the use of a building, and you can do that without laying a brick. You can do that by buying a building, getting a planning uplift on it, and then selling it as a development without laying a brick. Is actually a really good way of doing this. So firstly, you have to choose wisely. Must choose wisely when you are picking a product for development, because if you're picking an old pub in a village as a thing that you're looking to turn into residential, yeah, are you going to take the last pub out of the village? Are the planning authorities going to allow that? No, then probably not. You can't get rid of doctors, corner shops, dentists. You just can't do that. The other thing is if you're in a town centre where there's a run of shops, you're not going to get a house there, are you? Or an apartment on the bottom floor. You might get above it, but not on the bottom floor. And then if you are in a run of shops, you're going to have buildings either side. So you only have windows at the front and the back. That might mean that you can't have multiple apartments on different floors, which means that it might not be viable to turn into an apartment space. And then do you have shopping? Car park in there? Probably not. That might affect the viability. So when we're looking at our projects for development in the Swansea area, we have to hit transport links. So we put in bike and bin stores in buildings where we cannot have parking. Bike and bin stores allow us to tick the boxes for the transport department, particularly the bike thing, and we also look how far we are away from bus stations and train stations. And Swansea Council use a scoring system. So if you hit the right amount of scores, they'll sign it off and say that the transport department accepts this planning change. You have to tick all the boxes with all the departments to get an approval. But in terms of transport, if we're within X number of meters of a bus stop and we've added bike stores, then we've ticked the box and we're okay. So do you have room for that in a building you're looking to convert? You need to know these things. You need to choose wisely when you're looking at a property to convert from commercial to residential. Are you in a conservation area? These are difficult things. In conservation areas, say you're in an old town centre, you might have it so you cannot have windows. You might have to keep the old wooden windows. They cost a lot of money. might have to keep original brickwork and repair it instead of putting render over the top. In conservation areas, there's so many things. Like, we've had a planning application accepted on a old brick building where they made us use a very specific type of brick cleaning methodology in order to keep the features of the building perfect. They insisted on it, and it was expensive. So you've got to be careful if you're in conservation areas. You need to know what they are, where they are, what the rules are. And the best way of dealing with these things is to look at old planning applications. I read more planning applications than anyone else, probably. I know exactly what's been accepted, what's been rejected, what the comments are, everything in an area before I buy any property, because the history will tell you the future. Mixed use buildings. So in areas, we've just been discussing this really, where you are in a commercial environment, can you put apartments above? You probably can. And then you've got a mixed use building. Mixed use buildings are brilliant as long as you can get a good commercial tenant on the ground floor. But be wary of these. One excellent way of making money is to buy a building that is maybe empty or has a charity shop in it or something like that, because the bank will lend you a little bit of money against the value of that building based on the rent that you get. But if it's a small business, a charity shop, they'll lend you a, say, 3 times multiplier of the rent. So if you have a charity shop paying you 12 grand a year for a little shop, then the bank will lend you 36 grand on that. If you kick them out and you put in, say, Greg's or another blue chip client, they'll lend you maybe 10, even more times than that. So then that £36,000 in finance, they'll actually give you £120,000 in finance. Massive difference. And you can get these companies in by offering them peppercorn rents for a period. I'll give you £1 a month for 12 months if you move in and sign a 10-year contract. And you take a 10-year contract with McDonald's, Burger King, Greg's, Marks and Spencer's, whoever the fuck it is, to the bank and say, I've got a 10-year contract with this blue chip client for this property. They will lend you lots of money against that property, which then allows you to go and deploy that elsewhere on other things, or maybe to develop the upstairs. And that's actually a really easy way of making money out of property. So mixed use buildings, but also using blue chip clients and playing that strategy is an incredible way of making money in property. Commercial property, brilliant long-term rents, but harder to get. We had a commercial property, we got an ice cream maker in. We know this little ice cream local place you go in and get different. It took us, when we rent out a property, we get hundreds of tenants applying straight away. It took us 3-4 months to get this tenant in for commercials. It's harder to get, but when they move in, it's longer term. Also, with commercial property, you can't renovate a building for them. Let's say I renovated a commercial unit for planning to get a hairdresser in, and then I had an ice cream company move in. Well, so what you do is you give them a period of rent-freeness, and from that they then develop the building themselves into something that they want, and then they stay there for years and years and years. So you sign, say, a 5-year lease, not 1 year like you would with a tenant, a 5-year lease probably minimum, we say 6 months free, so that pays for them to renovate the building and use it how they want to. And if, say, a break clause after 3 years, so if it's not working for them, they can kick out, but they still hand you back, say, a cafe with all the bits. So and then you can rent it out from there as that. So it's basically free to renovate apart from structural issues and maybe getting supplies in. You can't give them a building with no electric or water or gas, but it's basically free to renovate. And you get longer term tenants. It just takes longer to get. So you need to think about the economic prospects of an area. I see people in Blackpool doing videos showing all these boarded up buildings. If you're getting a commercial building there and thinking of putting a cafe in it where everything else is boarded up, you're mad. Look at the economic prospects of an area, particularly if, say, you're in South Wales and you're near Port Talbot. Port Talbot has a steelworks that employs everybody. It's a massive steelworks. It's huge. If you've never seen it, it's worth having a look. It's monster size. If that closed down, that area's fucked. It's gone. Is it going to close down? No. There are big reasons for that. If we end up at war, we need to be able to produce bullets, tanks, planes, guns. we need steel production. So I don't think the government will ever let that shut down. But it's a great example of an area that's overly reliant on one employer. You have to be, if you're doing commercial units particularly, you have to be aware of what the economic prospects are of that particular micro area that you are in. Also be wary of technology. I am currently operating this podcast on my computer with everything I need from a desk in my house, from my dog down to my right hand side. My wife sat across the desk from me. My kids are at school. Happy days. Do I need an office? No, I do not. How many businesses are coming out of offices? My sister-in-law works for a company that's always operated in offices. Always, over years. Back in 2003, I was working in the same office block as her in a different company. Now, 20 years later, she's still operating from a company that does operate from that area, but they don't have the offices anymore. They've moved everybody home. They work from home. And that will happen more and more and more. So if you're looking at putting a office-like company into your building, be careful, because technology is taking that away. Physical things, such as say the ice cream shop, where you can't deliver that via the internet, can you? So you just basically pay attention. If you are putting small businesses in place that don't necessarily need office space, ask them the right questions, sign them up to longer term leases, and just make sure that you've got that basis covered. Because if you've got a commercial property and you plan to hold it for 20-30 years or whatever it might be, and you're doing it based off the fact that you're going to put in office type groups into there, then maybe in 10 years, think where technology is now. What's AI going to be like? What are virtual meetings going to be like in 2033? And it is going to affect use of office space. So you also need to have a plan. If I'm, say, doing a commercial HMO, where I've got commercial businesses and they're all little different office-based businesses, and technology takes them away from this space, can I convert this building into residential further down the line? So you always have a what if. So what ifs are important in commercial property. Commercial HMOs, I think, are brilliant. Take one big building, rent it out by the floor, by the space. You can have. My mum has inherited, or part inherited with her brothers and sisters, a commercial HMO in Frome, Somerset, where they rent out to various different businesses. Some quite good stories behind that as well. One of the tenants, I think it was an estate agent, stopped paying because he was arrested because he was in some sort of cult. Madness, isn't it? They get everywhere, these freaks and weirdos. So commercial HMOs, where you take one building that used to be for one big business effectively, and I think this is an old vinegar mill, and you rent it out individually in portions, is a great way of making money from commercial businesses. Just be aware of what's going in the future. And then commercial to residential conversions are another massive opportunity in the property industry. You have planning uplifts, where you take a building, add a planning application to it, get that approved, and then just sell it. Don't need to lay a brick. That planning application being approved means you're now selling a development with a value on the end of it. Say you take let's take the old vinegar mill in Frome. It's worth X amount on the open market. You get a planning uplift to turn it into 30 apartments. Those apartments are worth £100,000 each. Say that building's worth 500 grand now. Well, 30 apartments, 100 grand each, is worth 3 million. There's £2.5 million profit there. You have to develop it and spend costs on it, but there's money to be made there if the costs don't outweigh the profit margins. And if you can sell that as a development, I have a piece of land here with planning to do this. It will cost you this. Just by doing that planning uplift on that building, you might have made £500,000, because a developer will buy that off you for £1 million when you bought it for half. So planning uplifts without laying a brick can be a great way of making money in property if you do them right. And again, choose correctly. What are the planning applications in and around the area? In my mum and aunties and uncles' old vinegar mill property, that is in a place it shouldn't be. It's not on an industrial estate. It's in a residential area. Are the council likely to accept that as residential? Yes, very likely. Is there parking? What are the parking restrictions in the area? Is the sewerage system capable of accepting 30 more apartments? What's the road system like? How close are you to the amenities? Know all these things before you apply for planning. What has been accepted in the past? What has been rejected in the past? What are the council's criteria for things that they are looking for? Are they looking for more residential spaces? This is all publicly available information. You need to know it. If you're a professional, you do know it. And if you want to keep your money and not waste it, just do the reading, do the research. Go to bed reading planning applications. I do. It's fantastic fun. So, planning uplifts, great way of making money. Efficiency is so important. And in commercial to residential conversions, efficiency is something that you can have a lot of because you're not building something out of the ground. You don't need new bricks most of the time. You don't need new sewerage most of the time. You're just redoing the interior and maybe roofs and things like that. So your costs to convert a building are a lot less than to build a building. There are regulations. And regulations involving fire escapes, fire systems, all sorts of things like that. So say I'm doing a shared house. Say I've got a house and I'm converting it into a shared house. Then I will need fireboards, which are plaster boards that are fireproof to a certain degree, in the escape routes. So every room will have to lead to a door of some sort. I'll have to have fire escape signs. I will need fireboards in. I can't just leave the walls as they are, reskin them. I've got to replace the boards. I also need a certain level of fire system that is linked together with a panel in a central location somewhere. I can't just have fire alarms up. So I've got to run wires in and around behind. I can't just say this house looks decent. I'll just repaint it. I have to replace the fucking walls. I have to replace what's behind the walls. And that's just a case of regulations. So efficiency is, yes, you get it, but also plan ahead. You can't just, I can't rent this house now as a HMO because that's not a fire door behind me for those on the podcast. That is not a fire door. I have to replace that with a fire door. Fire frames, intumescent strips, which prevent smoke coming through. By the way, fire doors are some of the most amazing things, right? They're not fireproof doors as such. They just expand under heat. So they fill the frame. Bulb us out in the heat of a fire. Fill the frame, prevent smoke ingress, stop the fire from spreading into somebody's room. I think they give you half an hour. And by the way, that if you're in a room in a shared house, you'll have half an hour from the ceiling below you or above you, and the walls and the doors. You'll be super safe. And in Wales, if you're doing anything that's conversion or new, you got to fit a sprinkler system. Where's the tank going for that? I've worked with a developer before who's done his own designs and not designed where the sprinkler system goes in a tight fit 7-bed house. In fact, and an 8-bed house. And 3 flats. Didn't know what he was doing. Did his own designs. And then we've ended up having to build outhouses and things for sprinkler systems. Is that yeah. Like, where's this going? Like, you've got to consider these things. So careful of people that do their own designs when they don't know what they're doing. Careful of regulations and things in your conversions. Speak to planning officers, licensing officers. Speak to them early and often, and make sure that you are within regulations, particularly for fire regulations. By the way, if you break fire regulations, then you've hidden that a building. Firstly, you've hidden that from building control, because building control have to sign off conversions, and if building control aren't aware that you've broken fire regulations, then you've hidden something from them, lied to them, you've got fireboards and things like that. If you have a fire, somebody gets injured or killed, then you are criminally liable as a landlord, criminally, if you've been breaking the fire regulations. So don't skip that stuff. Not even because you're criminally liable, just because you're a human being. These things are there to protect people. The legislation is there to protect people, and we need to operate within that. So commercial to residential conversions, brilliant. You can be really efficient, but there are regulations, and those regulations cost money. Soundproofing is another regulation that you need to deal with in order to pass the tests, in order to be able to rent your property out when you've completed it, in order to get your building control certificate. Location, I've touched on this before. If you're in a city town centre with lots of footfall and lots of commercial premises, the last thing they're going to let you do is put a residential unit on the ground floor. What we've done in the past is halved the footprint of the residential unit on a ground floor, so the back is living space and the front is half the shop front it used to be. That's doable as well. So where is the property? If you've got a commercial property that's out in the sticks somewhere, that's an old warehouse or something, what are you going to do with that? Well, not apartments, are you? Maybe you could turn it into these nice big sort of barn-like living structures where people have these big country houses. You can do that. One of my good friends does that with conversions up around. My dog's grunting in her sleep. So you can convert properties, but you need to choose the right one for the right area. If you're looking at converting a Somerset barn, and you're looking at turning that to apartments when there's nobody lives within 3 miles of the place, and you're mad. It's never going to happen. It won't get approved, and if it does, you won't rent them out, will you? So choose wisely. And again, I've said this again and again, the planning in your area. Read all the planning applications on your street or the street you're looking at for the last 20 years. Well, 20 is a bit much, but it depends. And then the next street over, then the next street over, then the next street over. You end up reading 30 to 50 to 100 planning applications, but by the time you've done it, you will know everything that the planning officers have said, done, want and don't want in an area, and then you can design what you're doing accordingly and choose whether to buy that property or not. And do this before you buy a property, so you know what you're going to be able to do with it. And then, of course, permitted development. Permitted development is fucking beautiful. It is a class of development that supersedes the planning officers. The planning officers were not doing enough, accepting enough residential spaces. The government was filling up the country with people. So they said, we're going to overrule you and have permitted development. That means that different classes of building can be converted into other classes of building, and you can have extensions and things without the planning officers allowing it. Bear with me a second. Alexa, turn on the light. There we are. So that means that in certain classes of planning or certain classes of building can be changed to residential automatically. You still have to go through a process, but the planning officer cannot say no for any reason. Well, there are some reasons, but cannot generally say no. So don't ask for unreasonable things. Don't ask for a 50-foot golden unicorn with neon pink tail on the roof. Don't ask for something that's abnormal. But if you find something and you can do it under permitted development, you have a 100% chance of getting that planning application through, as long as you're being reasonable. And that will allow you to buy buildings, change their value, sell them on without laying a brick, or if you want to lay the bricks, make even more money off them. And I think my favourite at the moment, before the economy where it is flipping property, because all those rent issues are in the way at the moment, make it more difficult. But you can flip them, buy, refurbish, sell, buy, refurbish, sell, buy, refurbish, sell. We do about 20% on our flips. So buy a property for, I don't know, 80 grand, spend 20 grand on it, sell it for 120. 20%. Lovely. Do that. You can knock them out. You could probably do a refurb in 3 months. Sell it in 3 months, every 6 months. If you do that twice a year, that's actually 40%. That's alright, isn't it? 40% of your money, and it's stored in property whilst your cash is being inflated. At the end of the day, during times of inflation, you want assets, not cash. Assets, not cash. Assets, not cash. So 100 grand in the bank is worth 90 grand in a year because of inflation. Well, if your money's in a property and you're making 20% on it, then you are mitigating that inflation factor. Speed is key. Speed when you're flipping properties is important. You need to get in, get out, particularly now when it's unstable. Let's say the price of properties goes down 10%, which is 2008 crash-like levels or more, even, in fact, pretty much unheard of. But let's say it happens. The price of property goes down 10% whilst you're doing a flip worth 20%. Well, that means your profit margin is only 10%, not 20%. But it's better than you losing your 10% of your value because you kept your money in cash and the inflation eroded it. So flipping property is a great way of storing money and keeping its value during times of mass inflation and uncertainty. But also, you do need to operate at speed at these times as well. So one of the reasons, and I've got a YouTube video on this, how to buy property at auction, and I'm writing a book on how to buy property at auction. One of the reasons I love buying property at auction is speed. It takes 30 days to buy a house. 30 days is the set time period. You pay your deposit, pay the auctioneer's fees, get your whole legal pack in advance, and you've got 30 days to complete. No fucking about waiting for surveys, vendors, legals, people fanning around. 30 days. You can refurbish it in another 60 days. You can sell it 60 days later. You buy another one and you do the process again. And you've done 2-3 a year and you've made 40-60% on your money. And then instead of having one flip because it took ages to buy on the open market, I've got one purchase right now. We're 7 months into the purchase. 7 months in. But I'm getting a 7-bed HMO for £140,000. 7-bed HMO gets a commercial valuation. Commercial valuation is a multiplier of the rents. That thing, when full, is worth 400 grand. I'm buying it for 140. Spending 35 grand, including furniture on it, including fixing bits of the roof. Yeah, doing well out of that one, eh? So, but it's taken us 7 months to buy it, and quite honestly, if it wasn't such a good property, I'd chuck that money somewhere else and used it again and again. And you see how quickly you can make money with property if you're buying at auction. 30 days to buy it, 60 days in and out, up for sale, next. You can quickly rotate these so fast. So inflation versus your house prices, well, if money is losing 10% of value a year because of inflation and you do one flip, then you mitigate that by worth 20%, then you're mitigating that somewhat. But if you do 2 or 3 and make 40 or 60% versus the 10% loss, then you are laughing, absolutely laughing. And as professionals, that's what we do. And in any business, when you are rotating your stock more, you are making more money. That's how it works. So flips are also taxed on their profit, not their turnover. Everybody should pay fair tax for everything that we get. I can go outside now, fuck my leg and go to a hospital despite all the strikes and things, and they will fix it for me or put me in crutches or whatever. I can do that by driving on roads that are kept for me. I'm not crashing into rubbish and litter because that is collected for me. That I don't need to worry about bumping into old people because they're cared for us. So fair taxes are vital, and fair taxes are paid on flips. You pay tax, but there's a big argument in property about whether you should do things in your personal name or a company name. Don't fuck about with doing things in your personal name. This is a business and you are professionals. Do it properly, put it in a company. Stop with all this, I don't give financial advice. Do it in a company, all right, for God's sake. And from that you can take your costs off, you can take your dividends out, you can take your corporation tax, and a clever accountant will make you more money than they cost you by adjusting things so that you pay the right amount in dividends, the right amount of tax. You take X, Y, and Z costs off. They do that, and that's reasonable. But you still pay a decent amount of tax, and it's on the profit, not the turnover. Whereas when you rent them, you're now paying tax on the turnover. So that's another great reason for flipping them right now. And so in conclusion, I believe right now in 2023, the thing to do is to flip houses and do conversions. Buy them in a poor state. I can't swear so much on my YouTube, see. Buy them in a poor state, do them up and sell them. Or buy them in a poor state, get a planning uplift on them, do them up and then sell them. Or rent them if you're doing that. But as a principle, you need more people per property. So where it used to be really profitable to buy a property, do it up and rent it out to one person, now it's less likely. So you want to convert things into shared houses, you want to turn houses into apartments, you want to turn big houses into more smaller houses. More people per property is the way forward. And of course, Number 3, still on my list of things to do in 2023, are standard rentals. Buy-to-lets are bread and butter. There's no massive use of properties like you get in the shared houses. There's no lots of footfall through corridors. There's no monster use of kitchens and bathrooms, and people will always need places to live. The market will come back to us as landlords, investors and developers. It will be fine. So adding buy-to-lets to your portfolio is always a good idea and will always be a good idea. But right now, number 1, flips and conversions. Number 2, stick to the principle of adding more people per property. And number 3, after that, standard rental properties are the way forward. So in 2023, with the market the way it is and everything that's going on, tenant fee bans, eviction bans, Section 24, meaning we pay tax on our turnover, not our profit, as the only people in all of the Western history to have it, then okay, Open Heart, thank you. Oh, by the way, Open Heart, I've not known much about these people. I'm doing a TikTok live for my podcast people, and Open Heart, I follow them on TikTok, and you will not believe, we're one of the only countries in the world, I did not know this, that rips children from parents without consent and hands them over. I thought, watching Peaky Blinders, that this was a thing of the past, that they were sent to no, we do that now. We do that to people now. So follow Open Heart on TikTok and wherever else you find them and look at their content. It is horrific what we do to people. And do you know what? I'm probably over egging this a bit, because there's some situation where children are put in danger because they are birthed by smackhead mothers who have a history of abusing children and have partners that abuse people. But at the same time, you can't just be ripping babies off of mothers like we do. When you watch some of their content, you will be shocked at what goes on in this country. Absolutely shocked. So you do a great job, Open Heart. Nice to see you have to leave anyway. Yes. So back to property. Flips and conversions, more people per property, and standard rentals are the 3 things, and I'm doing flips this year and conversions more than ever. I think that'll do. We're 1 hour and 41 minutes in. Fantastic podcast episode. See me at keypropertiesuk.co.uk, somersetlettings.co.uk, hellonewhome.co.uk, hellomyroom.co.uk, podcast, the Martin Howard Property Podcast, UK Property Investment on TikTok, Key Properties UK on Instagram, God knows what is YouTube, Key Properties UK UK Property Investment on YouTube as well. I'll see you all again soon. Always deep dives on property content and things, real things, no bullshit with me. See you all again soon. Bye bye.